Okay, so today we're diving into the life of Lord Curzon.
Lord Curzon,
Yeah.
Viceroy of India.
This guy was like the poster boy for imperial ambition, right?
Absolutely.
And we've got these excerpts from Lord Curzon, the last of the British Moguls.
Right.
And I'm really curious to see what's underneath this whole superior person image.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to unpack, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, you've got this incredibly imposing figure,
Right.
but he was also a man of his time and place.
Totally.
And to really get under his skin, I think we have to start at the beginning
Okay.
with Kettleston Hall, his childhood home.
Oh, absolutely. Kettleston Hall.
Yeah.
This massive estate,
Yeah.
just dripping with history.
Portraits of his ancestors everywhere you look.
You can practically feel the weight of expectation, right?
You could practically taste it.
Like, just imagine growing up there.
It boggles the mind, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it makes you wonder, how could he not see himself as destined for greatness?
It's like, it's almost built into the architecture, isn't it?
It is. In fact, Garadia even points out the architectural similarities between Kettleston and Government House in Calcutta, where Curzon resided as viceroy.
Oh, wow.
So he's seeing these echoes of his childhood home in India.
It's like it's meant to be.
Exactly.
Wow, that's giving me chills.
It's a powerful connection.
It really is.
And speaking of destiny,
Right.
his family history is wild.
Oh, tell me about it. Did you know that if his great-grandfather hadn't legitimized his 6 illegitimate children,
No.
Curzon wouldn't have inherited Kettleston at all?
You're kidding?
Talk about a twist of fate.
That's incredible. But you know,
What's that?
it wasn't all plain sailing for the Curzon family?
Really?
Oh, no.
I mean, Kettleston just screams opulence.
Oh, it does. But remember, this is also the Victorian era. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing.
Right.
And just beyond those grand gates of Kettleston,
Yeah.
the working class is struggling.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you've got this really stark contrast
Yeah.
playing out right on his doorstep.
And you have to wonder if that influenced his worldview at all.
It's certainly possible.
Right.
Because on the one hand, he's growing up in this incredibly privileged bubble,
Right.
but he's also seeing the effects of poverty and inequality firsthand.
Yeah.
And then you look at his early attempts to launch his political career in South Derbyshire.
Right. And he totally bombs.
He does.
He just could not connect with the working class.
He couldn't. And you know what that reminds me of?
What class?
Disraeli's concept of two nations.
2 nations.
Yeah.
Okay.
He argued that Victorian society was deeply divided.
Okay.
You had the wealthy elite living in a completely different world
Right.
than the working class.
Right.
And it wasn't just about money.
Okay.
It was a whole mindset.
Interesting.
The upper classes,
Yeah.
they felt obligated to rule,
Right.
not necessarily to understand
Oh, that's interesting.
the people they ruled.
Wow.
So you can see how Curzon's upbringing,
Right.
even with those glimpses of the real world outside Kettleston,
Yeah.
might have already set him on a path where he was
Uh-huh.
disconnected from the average person's struggles.
It's like he's living in a completely different reality.
Exactly. And that's something that we see play out even more
Yeah.
as we move into his school years,
Okay, let's...
which we'll get to in a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember
What's that?
that Curzon wasn't just a product of his environment.
Right.
He was a complex individual,
Okay.
shaped by a web of experiences and relationships and ambitions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to really understand him,
Right.
we have to consider all of those factors.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got Curzon, this kid growing up in this, like, bubble of privilege, practically being groomed for power from day one.
Right, right.
But let's talk about his school years, because Garadia includes all these letters
Oh, yeah.
that Curzon wrote home from Wixenford and Eton,
Fascinating stuff.
and they are so revealing.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so right off the bat, what struck me was how different his letters to his mom are
Oh, yeah.
from his letters to his dad.
Totally different vibe.
Right. With his mom, it's all warm and affectionate.
Yeah.
But then with his father, it's like,
All buttoned up.
yeah, super formal, kind of distant.
Classic Victorian family dynamics, right?
Right. Like you can practically hear the stiff upper lip.
Oh, absolutely.
But, okay, you have to laugh
Okay.
about this one letter Garadia mentions.
Yeah.
The one Curzon wrote to his aunt when he was just a little kid.
No kidding. What'd he say?
She was getting engaged.
Oh.
And even at that age, she had opinions.
Oh, I bet he did.
It's hilarious.
I can only imagine.
But it also makes you think, you know, about the kind of psychological impact of all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, growing up with that kind of emotional distance with his father.
Right.
Was it, like, a classic Oedipal thing?
Maybe.
Or was it just par for the course back then?
I mean, Victorian family life was a whole different ballgame.
Totally different world. Okay. But there's this one part that really stuck with me.
What's that?
It's the section about the imagined tormentors.
Oh, right.
Garadia talks about these brutal punishments.
Brutal.
Inflicted by the governess.
Right.
And how these kids were basically powerless. But tell their parents about it.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. Like, can you imagine?
And you know what's crazy?
Right.
Back then, the idea of even questioning a governess's authority.
Yeah.
It was just unheard of.
It's like they were untouchable.
They were in a very strange position, that's for sure.
They really were. Not quite family, not quite service.
Oh, no man's land.
Exactly.
But they could wield incredible power over these kids.
It's true, and it's kind of scary when you think about it.
Definitely a different time.
For sure. So from this environment, we move on to Eton and Oxford with Curzon.
The hallowed halls of academia.
Right. And Garadia does not hold back.
No.
He paints this super vivid picture of the intellectual atmosphere, the pressure cooker of it all.
Oh, hit that.
These kids were expected to excel.
To be the best of the best.
Exactly.
And Curzon thrived in that environment.
Oh, he did. And then, of course, there's that famous line.
Which one?
You know, the one about Curzon being a superior person.
Oh, right.
It's almost ironic, don't you think?
How so?
Well, because later on he actually regretted that image.
He did.
But it makes you wonder, you know, if all that praise and validation he got from childhood all the way through university, if that contributed to his, like, unshakable self-belief.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Totally.
The more he's told he's exceptional, the more he believes it.
And the more he achieves.
Exactly. And it becomes this kind of feedback loop.
Wow. So you're saying that his education might have actually been a double-edged sword?
In a way, yes. It gave him the tools and the confidence to succeed, but it also might have blinded him to his own flaws.
Fascinating. So he's got this incredible drive to succeed, but is it possible that same drive is also holding him back in other areas of his life?
That's a really interesting question, and I think it's something that becomes even more apparent when we look at his personal relationships.
It's like his personal life follows that same thread of ambition, you know? Like, Garadia talks about those early flirtations, but then he meets Mary Leiter, and it's like,
totally different story.
Total whirlwind romance.
Yeah. Even Curzon.
Right.
With his meticulous plans and all that.
Exactly.
Even he gets swept off his feet.
Totally smitten.
It makes you wonder, though.
What's that?
Did he see Mary as another kind of conquest?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like another way to boost his social standing?
Because she wasn't exactly aristocracy, was she?
She wasn't.
American, wealthy, but not quite the same pedigree.
Not quite the same as marrying into British nobility.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's fascinating, though, how Mary seems to just accept this kind of...
Accept what?
This traditional role.
Right, the whole Victorian wife thing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the expectation back then.
Right.
But still...
It makes you think about what she gave up.
For sure.
To be with him.
Right. And it's a good reminder.
Of what?
That behind every great man, there's often a woman making sacrifices and dealing with a world that's completely set up for men.
It's kind of heartbreaking, though.
What if?
Knowing how it ends with Mary's death.
Right after their time in India.
Right.
Tragic.
And then Curzon marries Grace Duggan.
Right. Second marriage.
And there's that note from Grace that Garadia includes.
Yeah, what a letter.
It's just cold.
It really is.
Like, she's completely indifferent to him.
Yeah, even when he's dealing with all his grief and illness.
It's really sad.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
About
what it all cost him. All that ambition.
All that power.
Did it make him happy?
Right. Was it worth it?
You have to wonder.
It's like all the things that made him successful.
Yeah.
His drive, his focus. Maybe those same things.
What about them?
Prevented him from really connecting with people.
It's possible, isn't it?
Like, he pushed everyone away.
Maybe he built walls around himself.
It's kind of a tragic story when you think about it.
It really is.
This guy who had it all.
All the power, all the prestige.
But in the end, maybe he was all alone.
It makes you realize, doesn't it?
What's that?
that history is full of these really human stories.
It is.
It's not just dates and battles.
Yeah.
It's about real people.
Yeah, with flaws and dreams and heartbreaks.
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating.
I agree.
Because we get to see these historical figures.
Yeah.
Not just as these larger-than-life icons,
right,
but as complex human beings.
Exactly, with all their contradictions and vulnerability.
Exactly. It makes them relatable.
It makes history come alive, doesn't it?
It really does.
That's the power of these personal stories.
It's true.
They help us to understand the past in a whole new way.
It's like we're looking through a different lens.
A more human lens.
Exactly. Yeah. And suddenly everything clicks into place.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk about Curzon.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the life and times of Lord Curzon.
A truly fascinating figure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.